It's good to be in the house of the Lord. Leah and I were visiting with some friends last night. I had a few friends that were, or we had a few friends that were celebrating the freedom that they've been given from certain types of bondage. And it's a good thing to remember what God has brought us through, where God has brought us out of. And during the discussions that were happening and people talking, one friend shared some of her backstory, what she experienced in her life, and there were a lot of things. I mean, she kind of read my wife's mail. I mean, it was pretty much right up until there was this one area where Leah didn't get put in bondage and our friend did. And other than that, it's like, okay, well, there was two possibilities here, and one got what some would consider a worse end of the stick. And we were talking about it, and I think what I said is I think it took what it took that God allowed, this to bring you to Him. And if it needed something different, it was going to be something different, because it's not like Leah didn't have her areas of bondage that were probably different. Israel spent 400 years in bondage in Egypt, and it was to save them. It wasn't because they messed up, and it wasn't because God didn't like them. It actually saved them and brought them into a better relationship with Him than would have happened any other way. And I get that, because part of coming to a place where we no longer regret our past is understanding two things. It brought us to God. The relationship we have with Jesus today would not be the same if anything behind us was different, because it builds on, how we experience things. And because my mess, as cliche as it is, becomes a message in His hands that can help others. So you don't have to regret it, because you can help others with it. And so I understand when I hear people say, I'm grateful for what I went through when it was horrible and traumatic and tragic. I'm grateful to be a junkie or an alcoholic or a felon or whatever, because going through that is what it took for me to find God. I get that. Although I have a lot of, hey, sometimes kind of wish I was the kind of person that could have just, picked it up by osmosis from sitting in a pew all my life. So I didn't have to go through that. But there's a reason why one of my favorite DC Talk songs is Hard Way. Some people got to learn the hard way. I guess I'm the kind of guy who had to find out for myself. But now I'm on my knees and I'm crying out, because trying to do it myself screwed everything up. But it's easy to think about, okay, all right, fine. I had to go through this in order to have the relationship with God that I have. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful He made that way. But if we stop and get our eyes off of ourselves for a minute, look what I had to go through in order to finally get broken enough to find Jesus and relationship with Him. But look what He did so that you could find Him. We're making bad choices and reacting wrong and acting wrong and thinking wrong and falling for lies. And so we go through all kinds of stuff that it takes to get to him. But if he hadn't done what he did, we could go through anything and everything and still not get to him. No matter how broken we got, we wouldn't find freedom. We wouldn't find life. No matter how, okay, I get it now. Rebellion against God is not a good idea. I submit. If he wasn't the gracious, loving, merciful, caring God that he is, it wouldn't do any good. We know what the word genocide means because there are people who say no surrender. We want you gone. And if anybody ever had a right to do it, enemies of God, gone, right? But instead, he wrapped himself in flesh. Spent 3 decades or so, give or take a year or 2 or 3, on this earth, doing what we were always supposed to do and can't and couldn't and won't and don't want to. And then going through the worst rejection, the worst betrayal, the worst injustice that this world has ever seen. Unbelievable torture and pain and death so that you could get to God. So that you could find relationship with your Creator. So that the Holy Spirit could make his abode inside you so that you could be rebuilt and transformed so that you could be what you were created to be, who you were created to be. And he will finish the work, but he did the work. So sometimes, as good as it is to see where God has brought us through, we also need to remember what he went through to get to us, because it wasn't an easy thing just because he's God. He really hurt. He really suffered. He really died. And unlike us, he really didn't deserve it. But he did it. So as much as we can and should be grateful for even some of the hard stuff we've been through because it drove us to God, we need to be more grateful that there was a cross to be driven to. Because without the heart of God for us, our brokenness doesn't matter. He was broken to heal ours.